Good morning, everyone, and welcome to distinguished guests, colleagues, young people and children from Colombia, countries and continents really across the world. And a warm welcome also to the 100 or so people that did register to join us online. We're very pleased to have you, and apologies for being a little late. Lots going on here, and I'm also aware for many of you across the world it's a momentous day. It's my pleasure to open the event, co-hosted by Ending Corporal Punishment, Child Fund Alliance, Save the Children and the World Health Organisation. My name's Margaret Sheehan and I'm the CEO of Child Fund Australia, and I'm here today representing the Child Fund Alliance, which is a global group of 11 child-focused organisations that work to service or support 30,000 children, 70 million children, no, 30 million children in across 70 different countries. Child Fund is a firm advocate for the prohibition of corporal punishment in all forms and in all settings. We have a proud track record of partnering with children and their families, with governments, with academia and with civil society to end corporal punishment against children. So it's therefore my privilege to be moderating the session today as we celebrate and we recommit what we're calling the March of Progress on corporal punishment, and we call for accelerated actions as we approach 2030. Violent physical punishment in homes and in schools is still commonplace, and it's accepted in many countries and many communities worldwide. 4 in 5 children under the age of 13 are regularly subjected to violent punishment in their own homes. Only 14% of children are fully protected by laws from corporal punishment, and 793 million school-aged children live in countries where corporal punishment in school is not prohibited. This is despite over 50 years of research with strong evidence that connects corporal punishment with multiple short and long-term harmful impacts for children. These harms, and I know they're very familiar to many of you, include psychosocial, emotional and physical impacts, not to mention the substantial economic costs for countries and communities. When our countries and communities accept corporal punishment, we normalise violence in childhood. We want to change that. While acknowledging there is work ahead of us till 2030, we do want to pause to celebrate the progress that we've seen. 40 years ago, only 2 countries, Sweden and Finland, had passed a law banning all corporal punishment of children. This year, in June, Tajikistan became the 67th country to take this fundamental legislative step to protect children and to uphold their rights. Prohibition in education and other settings also continues to grow. And there is sound evidence that when law reform is well implemented, a reduction in the acceptance and use of corporal punishment and other forms of violence follows. Just last month, I visited Papua New Guinea, where Child Fund supports a rights, respect and resilience program in partnership with the Papua New Guinea Education Department. Central to the success of this initiative has been promotion of student wellbeing and working with teachers on behaviour management plans, including modelling positive discipline in classrooms. I visited a school where the principal and the school council prohibited and policed corporal punishment by the teachers, the parents and the students. This has created both a safer school and a community where parents are less tolerant of violence and less tolerance of violence being committed really against their children in the schools. The PNG government, along with other governments that are represented here today, including, and there are many in this room, and I warmly welcome you, from Sierra Leone, South Africa, Equatorial Guinea, Cambodia, Philippines, Mongolia, Sri Lanka, Timor-Leste and Lesotho, are all committed in their own way to legislation and implementation of prohibition on corporal punishment, but we acknowledge that you are all at different stages and hoping very much that we can hear from you a bit more later today. Genuine collaboration and investment from government, communities, civil society and children can create safe schools, promote positive parenting, teach children that violence is not normal, and together seek a future where no child has to experience the indignity of violent punishment at school or in their homes. So today we'll hear about multiple examples of how collaborative efforts of civil society, academia, young people and government have been vital to progress on the prohibition of corporal punishment. In particular, we'll explore what the latest research tells us about the urgency to end violent punishment. We'll learn from the experiences of political leaders and policymakers who have enacted and implemented laws to prohibit corporal punishment. So I acknowledge there are governments here who have prohibited corporal punishment and others that are looking to prohibit corporal punishment. And we will hear about the tangible and vital role of civil society in shaping and implementing laws and policies to keep children safe and to change social norms. So we have a few welcoming and introductory speakers, and the first of those, we've gone a little bit out of order here, but the first of those is Dr. Etienne Krug. He is a Belgian physicist and epidemiologist known for his research on injury and violence prevention. He's been the director of the Department of Management for Non-Communicable Diseases, Disability, Violence and Injury Prevention at the World Health Organization since that department was founded in 2014. Today, Etienne will touch on violence against children as a public health crisis and a call to accelerate our action on corporal punishment as a preventive health measure. Welcome, Etienne.
Thanks so much, Margaret, and thanks for calling me a physicist. I think I failed almost every exam in physics I had when I was at school, so I'm really happy to have this promotion in my career. Good morning, colleagues. Great to see all of you here at this event on the eve of what I hope is going to be a historic moment for violence against children. As you know, tomorrow we kick off the first ever global ministerial conference on violence against children. More than 1,000 people will participate, more than 130 countries will be there, about 80 ministers, and above all, a whole series of countries have come all the way to Bogota to make some very important, concrete, ambitious pledges of how to accelerate work on tackling violence against children. But I'm very happy we have this satellite event today on corporal punishment. Corporal punishment is the most widespread form of violence, as Margaret just said, and corporal punishment is bad for health. Might seem obvious to all of you because you're working on it, you're interested in it. It's not obvious for most of the world. It's not even obvious for the World Health Organization to stand up on a podium and say corporal punishment is bad for health. But I think the evidence has grown to such an extent that we can very confidently say this, and that I can also announce that we're embarking on a movement to ban corporal punishment at a much more rapid pace than what we have seen so far. Many studies have shown that children suffering from corporal punishment have troubles with many different aspects of public health. It has an impact on their mental health, anxiety, insomnia, all the way up to depression and sometimes suicide. It has an impact on their physical health, of course, injuries, sometimes most dramatic cases are leading to death. But also because it changes children's behavior. It is more likely that they will smoke, that they will abuse alcohol, which, as we know, are big risk factors for other public health issues. Corporal punishment was invented by us human beings because we thought that this was the best way to discipline and raise children. And we invented something that is utterly unhealthy and that needs to be banned. So I'm really happy you're coming together here to discuss more in depth how countries have banned it and what we can learn from these different approaches. What we know confidently now, as Margaret said, Sweden did it 50 years or so ago, and many others have followed. We're at 67 countries now, I think, that this works. Countries that have adopted legislation and that have communicated about that legislation and that have worked on letting people know that it's not just inked on paper, but that it's something that is right to do for the children, that there are alternatives for corporal punishment to discipline children. Countries that have done that have seen decreases in the knowledge of parents about disciplining and have seen decreases in corporal punishment. They also have seen in some cases decreases in criminal behavior. They have seen improvement in results at school. There's a whole series of consequences that have come from these bans. So it's definitely worth discussing. So thanks to all for being here. Just a little plea, I know there's many governments here in the room. We have decided just yesterday to organize a small meeting this afternoon of like-minded countries for heads of delegations or senior officials who would like to think about the first ever World Health Assembly resolution on banning corporal punishment. So today at 3 o'clock in the Hilton, just behind the corner here, we will host a meeting. We have a small meeting room. So if you're from a government and you're interested in brainstorming with other like-minded countries about the possibility of embarking on this adventure, which I think would be an amazing step in the right direction, please talk to my colleague Helen, who's going to stand up there in the back, and let her know you're interested in joining that meeting today at 3 o'clock at the Hilton. It's not going to be long, but we would love to have a few more governmental representatives with us. Thanks to all for being here. I look forward to interacting with all of you over the course of the next 2 days. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Etienne, and I'm sure some of you will be interested in that meeting today at 3 o'clock. The next person I'd like to welcome is Christine Colby-Stewart. She's the Child Protection Specialist at UNICEF, and her work has been focused on prevention of violence against children and women. In her current role, Christine is leading UNICEF's efforts to integrate and scale social and behavioural change informed approaches within policy and programming to prevent violence against children and against women. She represents UNICEF within the End Corporal Punishment Initiative Reference Group, the Technical Working Group for INSPIRE. Sorry, because we do a lot of things, Christine. The Global Initiative to Support Parents, and is UNICEF's agency focal point for the Spotlight Initiative. Today, Christine will speak on the human rights imperative to prohibit and eliminate corporal punishment. Please help me welcome Christine.
Dignitaries, ministers, colleagues, it's an honour to be with you today at this historic moment to support this satellite event with the Global Initiative to End Corporal Punishment and its partners, who've been so critical in our collective efforts to accelerate action to end corporal punishment. So my role here today is really to underscore UNICEF's commitment to ending violence against children in all its forms, to expand on UNICEF's commitment to action to end corporal punishment, and to share our understanding of how corporal punishment can be prevented. So let me begin by reiterating that corporal punishment represents a fundamental and egregious abuse of a child's rights, and that action to end it is really a human rights imperative. Corporal punishment is the most common form of emotional and physical abuse worldwide. It has long-lasting consequences for children's emotional, physical, and psychological well-being, and yet it continues to be experienced by an unimaginable number of children in multiple settings of their lives on a very regular basis. Across the world, UNICEF supports states to monitor and implement the Convention on the Rights of the Child, which sets out children's rights to protection from corporal punishment and other cruel or degrading treatment. The concluding observations of the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child, which oversees the Convention on the Rights of the Child, consistently highlight the importance of enactment and implementation of laws prohibiting corporal punishment. And as such, together with the End Corporal Punishment Initiative, last year, UNICEF monitored and tracked laws related to corporal punishment in over 150 countries and supported programs specifically related to legislative and policy frameworks in 100 others. Legislation plays a fundamental role in preventing corporal punishment. In many contexts, it acts as a major deterrent to individual behaviour and sets a normative standard about what's acceptable in society. However, the impact of the rule of law is mediated in different contexts by a broad range of factors, and the drivers of corporal punishment are themselves multifaceted and context-specific. And for that reason, UNICEF advocates for programming interventions, acknowledging the complex relationships between people, services, policy, law, norms, and institutions that drive human behaviour. And these kinds of systematic programme models are emerging all over the world, and with UNICEF support in many countries, including Nepal, Laos, Zambia, who we're going to hear from some of those today. And as set out in the Inspire strategy, which serves as the framework for this important conference that we're at today, UNICEF has found that effective, comprehensive programme models seek to reduce the risk of corporal punishment by working across different levels of society. So firstly, at home, where UNICEF equips caregivers and parents through programmes in over 85 countries to interact with children in positive, playful and nurturing ways. In school environments, classrooms and curricula, where UNICEF works through ministries of education to end violence in, around and through educational school settings. Through the legislation and services that provide the architecture for child protection. And with communities, where UNICEF works to promote children's voice and stimulate critical discussion to challenge the harmful norms that too often condone violence. The final component of UNICEF's contribution is as a custodian of SDG 16.2.1. UNICEF works with national statistical offices across the world to measure the proportion of children aged 1 to 17 years who experienced any physical punishment and/or psychological aggression by caregivers in the past month. We also complement this with our own monitoring initiatives and our own data collection. And as a result, there is today internationally comparable high-quality data from 92 countries about the prevalence of this form of violence. In short, UNICEF sees progress made towards ending corporal punishment as a barometer of society's acceptance of children's rights and a reflection of the tide of change we need to see in the social norms that too often condone other forms of violence against children. Working to end corporal punishment is a mainstay of our efforts to end all forms of violence against children, and we're delighted to work in collaboration with our partners here today and look forward to a fruitful discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine and Etienne, both for those opening comments. Before we head to our Zambian government rep, who is going to talk about in much more detail the experiences of them prohibiting corporal punishment in Zambia, we're going to take a short look at a video that reminds us of the progress that's been made, but also the miles remaining in our march. So if we could see the video, thank you. So you can see we took a while to get there with those first 2 and 3 countries. Can I just ask, by looking at the map, can you raise your hand if you're from a country where corporal punishment is fully prohibited? Okay, so we're kind of talking partly to the converted, but also a number of other governments, as we can see there, that are still on the way. And to that end, we have specifically invited 2 governments, and so Zambia and Colombia, who today will talk about their experiences. So we're very pleased to have with us today Ms. Angela Kawandami, the Permanent Secretary of the Government of Zambia, to share some of their experiences, including their factors for success and the barriers and challenges of prohibiting and implementing measures to eliminate corporal punishment for children in Zambia. Angela is passionate about issues relating to the promotion and protection of vulnerable groups of women and children, and she has worked supporting this ending corporal punishment for a very long time. We're very pleased to have her. Her minister couldn't come at the last minute, and she's very graciously stepped in, then got stuck in some traffic, so she's overcome some obstacles to be here this morning, and a very warm welcome to you, Angela.
Good morning, everyone. Let me begin by thanking the conveners of this event for giving Zambia an opportunity to share on what we are doing and what we have done so that we've ended corporal punishment as a country, and also to give us an opportunity to learn from others for how to accelerate action to end the vice globally. We recognize that corporal punishment is linked to a range of negative outcomes for children across countries and cultures, including physical and mental ill health, socio-emotional development, poor educational outcomes, increased aggregation, and perpetration of violence. Zambia remains very committed to ending corporal punishment in all settings. To operationalize the abolishment of corporal punishment in Zambia, the government implemented several key interventions that have contributed to the advancement of child welfare in the country. These initiatives focus on promoting positive discipline, enhancing teacher and caregiver training, and ensuring legal frameworks align with child protection standards. I will now talk about the policy and legal frameworks. Government has worked to incorporate the abolishment of corporal punishment within educational policies and laws that promote children's rights. This has included aligning national policies with international child protection standards, such as the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, which Zambia has ratified. Legal amendments and educational policies that advocate for non-violent forms of discipline in schools and communities. For instance, we have the Education Act of 2011 that ensures that children are well protected. Under this law, there's a provision that a teacher, employee, or other person at an educational institution shall not impose or administer corporal punishment or degrading or inhumane treatment of a learner, or cause corporal punishment or degrading or inhumane treatment to be imposed or administered to a learner. And then it further says that a teacher, employee, or other person who contravenes this subsection commits an offense and is liable, upon conviction, to a fine not exceeding 100,000 penalty units, or to imprisonment for a period not exceeding 1 year, or to both. Then there's also the teacher training and support. Government has introduced teacher training programs on positive discipline methods. These are aimed to shift disciplinary practices from punitive to supportive. Through continuous professional development, educators are encouraged to adopt approaches that foster a safe, nurturing, and respectful learning environment. There is also a provision of guidance and counseling services in schools to ensure that the welfare of children is guaranteed. The third point that we have is the community and parental engagement. Government and stakeholders have continued to engage parents and communities in understanding and supporting the ban on corporal punishment through the parent-teacher associations. Then we also have public awareness campaigns which highlight the negative impacts of corporal punishment and the benefits of positive discipline for children's development through open days and other platforms. Community leaders and social workers are often involved in these campaigns to foster a collaborative approach to child welfare. Then we have the counseling and child support services. The education and social welfare sectors in Zambian schools provide support systems for children who may have experienced corporal punishment or any other forms of violence. These services include counseling, reporting systems within schools, and the access to social workers who can support children and their families. Then we'll now just maybe a bit around the monitoring and evaluation. The government, through the Ministry of Education, under the Directorate of Standards Assessment and Evaluation, in collaboration with non-governmental organizations and international partners, has introduced mechanisms for monitoring and evaluating the implementation of non-violent discipline policies. This includes tracking incidents, gathering feedback from schools and communities, and addressing compliance issues to ensure that all educational institutions adhere to child welfare standards. The above interventions have been further enhanced by the Children's Code Act number 12 of 2022, Section 22, which has provided for protection from corporal punishment in all settings, which includes schools, families, child reformatory, or child-approved centers. In conclusion, these interventions help to create a holistic approach to child welfare, ensuring the provision of a safe environment where children's rights are enhanced and their physical and emotional well-being are promoted. I thank you all.
Thank you very much. And I can understand now why some of the co-organisers very much wanted Zambia to be here. So to hear about, such, I say, specific and clear policy, and then to be monitoring it and I suppose policing it in that way is a great example. The next part of the session, we have three esteemed researchers who are going to talk about research. So I'm wondering if they might like to come onto the stage. So we have Elizabeth, Jorge and Sonia. If the three of you might, I was going to say join me on the couch, but it's not quite a couch, is it? But if we joined them together, it would be a couch. And I've just been reminded that I was supposed to tell everyone that this session, because we're online, is being recorded. So I hope you haven't said anything you didn't want to say. Although my stumbling earlier, probably I wish that wasn't recorded. Maybe it wasn't. But anyway, following this, so we'll have the research session, then we will open the floor and we will hear from more countries about what they're thinking about, what they're doing. But we're very pleased to have our researchers here with us this morning. But before I introduce them, I did want to show you, and I suppose it is, and just to warn you, a bit of a hard-hitting video that reminds us about how painful and how detrimental violence is to children. And sometimes we don't need to say it, but sometimes it's a good reminder. So if we could have the second video. Thank you.
Maya! Maya!
Di ba sinabi ko pumirmi ka lang dito sa bahay? Tanghaling tapat ang init-init. Inauna mo pa yung paglalago? Gusto mo pakain ko sa'yo yan? Ha? Gusto mo pakain ko sa'yo yan? Ba't hindi ka nakikinig? Ha? Ba't di ka nakikinig, ha? Wag na wag kang aalis dito. Ha?
Bumalik ka dito! No! Hindi ka magkadala! Ha?
Sabi ng nanay at tatay ko, pinapalo nila ako. Kasi, mahal nila ako. Kasi, dapat daw tayong matuto. Kaya ka pinalo.
Tama yun.
Siguro.
Eh di paglaki natin, mamamalo din tayo.
Elizabeth Gershoff. She's the director of the Population Research Centre at the University of Texas, Austin. Elizabeth is an internationally recognised expert on the effects of corporal punishment on children, and her research focuses on preventing and understanding the impacts of violence against children in their homes and schools. Elizabeth is also active in several professional organisations, including the American Psychological Association, the Association of Population Centres, the National Initiative to End Corporal Punishment of Children, and the National No-Hit Zone Committee. Welcome, Elizabeth. That next presentation.
Thank you all for coming. So I have been studying the effects of physical punishment, or also called corporal punishment, for over 30 years. And today I just want to share a few facts that I hope will be helpful for you in your advocacy efforts. As we've heard, physical punishment is the most common form of violence against children. UNICEF has documented that nearly 2/3 of children experience physical punishment from their caregivers. Corporal punishment is also very common in schools, unfortunately. In some countries, 70 to 90% of children are hit in schools. So physical punishment harms children in many ways. It harms them physically. It causes them physical pain. It causes them to have injuries such as bruises, cuts, welts, sometimes broken bones. It causes children to be afraid and angry, as you saw in that video. That was a very good illustration of how children feel and how they internalize those feelings and then do not want to listen to their parents because they're afraid of them or are angry at them. We also know that the experience of being hit, just as any adult in this room, if we were hit, we would feel physiological stress in our bodies. That fight or flight stress system gets activated. When that gets activated over and over in time, that leads to changes in brain functioning, how children's brains actually work, and then leads to wear and tear on the body, which leads to illness over time, including increased rates of heart problems, of lung problems, even cancers. We know that physical punishment is not effective at helping children learn how to behave. Physical punishment teaches children what not to do, but it does not teach them what to do. So if we want children to learn how to behave, hitting them is not the way to do that. It teaches them to distrust others, such as their parents and teachers, people they should be trusting, people they should be going to learn from. And our research has shown that children who are physically punished are not more compliant with their parents in the short term and in the long term. There have now been hundreds of research studies that have looked at the impacts of physical punishment on children. In a recent review that my colleagues and I published in The Lancet, we looked at 98 different research studies and found that in all of them, physical punishment was associated with harm to children. In none of them was there a positive outcome. And we looked for positive outcomes, and there were none. So physical punishment was associated with more aggression over time, and these were all studies that looked over time. They were looking for change. So if physical punishment worked, we would see improvements over time. Instead, we see worsening of child behavior over time. We see increased aggression, we see increased problem behavior such as lying and stealing. We see worse mental health such as depression and anxiety. And we see lower levels of pro-social behavior, the things we want children to be doing, sharing, being kind to other people. They're less likely to do those things. We also know that physical punishment impairs children's ability to learn. In a study that Dr. Cortes and I did together here in Colombia, we looked at children, young children and their families, again looking over time, and the more children had been physically punished as children, the slower their growth in cognitive abilities over time, including their memory and their ability to do problem solving. And that was true even after we looked at how violent the communities were, the family income, how involved the parents were with their children. It was really physical punishment that was driving this effect that we saw. And so it's not surprising that when we look at the school context, children are not doing well in school when they are physically punished or corporally punished in school. This is from UNICEF's Young Lives study, looking at 4 countries and looking at, again, change in academic achievement over time. As we see in Ethiopia, India, and Vietnam, we saw worsening of math skills and sometimes verbal skills over time. In none of these countries was physical punishment predicting better achievement. Children are not doing better in school when they are hit there. Physical punishment is costly to society in many ways, and one of those ways is actually economic. A study by researchers at Plan International several years ago looked at just India and looked just at school corporal punishment. And they looked at losses in achievement of children and of earnings and increased demand on society for services. They found the cost was 1.5 to 7.4 billion was the range. And that was just India, and that was just corporal punishment in schools. So if we need any other reason to ban corporal punishment, there is a financial one. We should do it for children, but our countries also would benefit financially if we were to ban corporal punishment. And finally, we can prevent physical punishment or corporal punishment. We can educate parents. Parents need to learn how to discipline better. Children need discipline from their parents. We're not advocating for permissive parenting, but parents can do things that are more positive, as we've already heard. And parents can be taught those things. They can be taught ways to discipline that replace physical punishment. And finally, physical punishment bans are of benefit to society. A research study that looked at 68 different countries with 400,000 children found that countries that had bans saw lower levels of violence, youth violence, than countries without bans. So these bans can be effective in helping change norms in society about violence and using violence to solve problems. I will not do the summary, well, I'll do a quick summary if you want to take a picture of it, but I will keep going to save time. This is my email address if you'd like to email me for any questions, or if you would like copies of the research that I just talked about, please email me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth. And I think what I take from your talk is that there are absolutely no benefits at all from corporal punishment. Next, we're delighted to have Jorge Cortaz. He's the Assistant Professor for Applied Psychology and Director of the Catalyzing Action for Resilience Ecologies Lab, or CARE, at the New York University. His work examines the development and consequences of prevention of violence against children, the links between climate change and human development, and the design, implementation and evaluation of parenting and early childhood policies and programs. He has served as a senior consultant on violence against children at the World Bank and UNICEF, among others. Jorge will be sharing the latest developments in research on corporal punishment, including impacts on child development, prevalence among young children, and the impact of positive parenting interventions. Welcome, Jorge.
Good morning, everyone. First of all, welcome to my beloved hometown, Bogota. It's great to have you here. It's great actually to be able to present my research here in Bogota. It's really an honor and a pleasure to be in my country to talk with you about physical punishment, and in particular about the findings that we have from scientific studies on the potential consequences of physical punishment and also on how to prevent physical punishment. So today I'm hoping to use a couple of minutes to share three main findings from our scientific studies. The first one is that physical punishment may affect brain development. The second one, that physical punishment seems to produce harm across cultures, settings, countries, and regions. And the last one is that physical punishment can actually be prevented. So to start, I would like to remind you again one of the things that Dr. Gershov just shared, and is the fact that physical punishment is pain, fear, and stress. And we know from several neurobiological models of human development that this can actually lead to a biological embedding of adversity and stress. And in theory, this could also affect brain development. So we tried to test this hypothesis in a study with neuroscientists from Harvard University, finding actually that children who were spanked in particular, which is the most socially normative and accepted form of physical punishment, were actually developing in an atypical way in the prefrontal cortex, specifically in areas that tend to engage or are critical for higher order skills, such as executive functioning, as well as for social emotional skills, including self-regulation and the regulation of aggressive behaviors, for example. The second finding is that physical punishment seems to be universally harmful, and the evidence is actually quite conclusive. We have several studies from multiple settings showing the same negative effects of physical punishment. And actually, with Professor Gershov, we just finished a new systematic review and meta-analysis analyzing 195 studies conducted in all these different countries. So we have data and evidence for about 95 different countries. And what we have found is actually quite consistent negative effects of physical punishment in all these different countries and regions of the world, including things such as increased risk for mental health problems in childhood, adolescence, and adulthood, also impaired cognitive development, learning and academic trajectories, impaired social emotional skills, and also things such as a worse parent-child relationship and increased acceptance and endorsement and actual use of violence across their life course, including bullying and also intimate partner violence in adulthood. So something that is also quite remarkable about these findings is that these results seem to be quite consistent in different countries. So we see a little bit of variation, but in every single country, we see these negative associations or effects. So I think that taking together these two main bodies of findings, we can confidently say that physical punishment is harmful and increases a lot of different risks for children, adolescents, and adults. And to say this totally clear, and given that we are in Colombia, I'm also going to say it in Spanish. El castigo físico es malo para el desarrollo infantil, para el desarrollo adolescente, a lo largo de la vida, y no hay ninguna evidencia de que pueda ser beneficioso para los niños y las niñas. Entonces la evidencia es bastante clara en ese sentido. With this, I'm turning to the last scientific finding that I'm hoping to share today, which is the fact that physical punishment can actually be prevented. And we actually do have very good frameworks and tools to this line of work, including the INSPIRE framework by the World Health Organization, where we know that the strategies that may work include, for example, legislation and enforcement of laws, also interventions to shift attitudes and beliefs about physical punishment being helpful, for example, and also other things such as supports for parents and caregivers. And I want to focus a little bit more on this one, because actually in Colombia, in partnership with the Instituto Colombiano de Bienestar Familiar, and also with Parenting for Lifelong Health, we have been gaining a lot of lessons on how to do this work effectively. Actually, in this line of research, we have understood that in order to prevent violence and physical punishment effectively, we really need to care for the caregivers and to work on promoting their positive mental health and well-being. Secondly, we also understood that these programs should be based on strengths-based approaches, including building upon caregivers and parents' beliefs, knowledge, and expertise, because they are parents, right? So they have the expertise and they want the best for their children. So we need to build upon that. Third, we need to not only provide information, but actually to support the development of key capabilities for parenting. And finally, we should definitely see these parenting programs and supports as global goods. So they should be free and available at global scale. So to conclude, I would like to invite you to take a look to some of the things that we have been doing in Colombia with the parenting program Apapacho. I would also invite you to check out the handbook for decision makers on designing, implementing, evaluating, and scaling parenting programs. And I would like to conclude with a very short reflection with another scientific finding from human development science. And it's the fact that children, adolescents, and adults are resilient. So even children who have been exposed to violence can achieve positive outcomes if adequate supports are in place. So my invitation is for all of us to continue working together to ensure that we have these supports in place and also nurturing care that children need to thrive. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jorge, and many things to take from, I think, your brief presentation, but one that we have plenty of research. So sometimes our inaction is not based on the fact that we don't have enough research, but we know that research is very important in getting particularly governments to take action. So I think it's been very valuable. Our third and final speaker in our research area is Sonia Vahito. Sonia joined the WHO Violence Prevention Unit in September 2023. She's a consultant focusing on law reform to end corporal punishment of children. Prior to this, she worked for the UN-hosted End Violence Partnership as the legal policy specialist around corporal punishment. Sonia has over 20 years of advocacy and management experience in the not-for-profit sector in the UK and in Africa, particularly in Ethiopia and South Africa. Sonia will be speaking to the global progress on prohibiting corporal punishment and share what evidence tells us about the positive impact these efforts have made. Thank you and welcome, Sonia.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and it's nice to see you all here with us. So, I'll start, but we've already mentioned it in the introduction, and talking about the 67 countries that have prohibited corporal punishment in all settings, including in the home. So obviously you could see, starting with Sweden and then ending now. At this day we have Tajikistan, who prohibited recently, so 67 states. But then, what we have with those 67 states, what is it exactly? It represents only 14% of the global population of children, 14%. You see the pie? So we have to do more. This is not enough. We have 76% of children worldwide who are protected against corporal punishment in some settings, but not in the home. So we need to do more. And then if you see the pie again, the burgundy, kind of purple, 10% of children who are not protected at all in any setting. So wherever they go, they can be hit legally by any adult. So we need to work on that. And then you see the chart as well. You see that in 30 states, children can be sentenced to corporal punishment. So as we talk about corporal punishment, it can happen in the home, it can happen in schools, but it can also be ordered by the courts. So it is important to take that into account. So as we talk about law reform, enacting laws to end corporal punishment, to prohibit corporal punishment, we're often asked, why do we need laws to end corporal punishment? Why don't we just work on adults, sensitize them, and get them to stop their behavior? And then we usually give the example of some other harmful practice like child marriage. Are we going to ask parents to stop giving their children for marriage, work on them, sensitize them, and then maybe consider enacting a law in the future? We don't do that. Usually we prohibit child marriage, and then after that we talk to parents. So this is what we're doing with corporal punishment. Corporal punishment, we have to prohibit it. We need the laws. And the laws actually are to send a clear message that children should be protected against violence, against corporal punishment, however light. The laws are not necessarily to prosecute adults. It's for the children, to protect them. So we have the laws for prevention, for education, mainly. This is why we need the law, to enact the law. It sends a clear message. So, but when we have the law, are the laws enough? Are they sufficient to protect our children against corporal punishment, however light? No. And that we have research findings. So we found that in some countries that have prohibited law, corporal punishment, so they have the law, and then equally they have public education initiatives. Adults are less likely to use corporal punishment. In countries where you have only public education, obviously you have more adults using corporal punishment. In countries where you have nothing at all, no law, no publication, obviously in this research we have about 92% of adults likely going to use corporal punishment. So we need the law, but we need also measures to support the law, implementing measures to support the law to ensure that we eliminate corporal punishment in all settings. So what kind of measures can we have? We can have, for example, parenting support, family intervention. You have that to promote positive parenting and then non-violent parenting, a sort of positive, non-violent rapport between relationships between parent, caregiver, and children. You also have positive intervention in the school settings. So you can have positive discipline. You can have, for example, training for teachers, classroom management, all this to avoid, obviously, using violent punishment and ensure that there's a positive relationship between adult teachers and the children and the student. There are also other forms of intervention, for example, the no-hit zone, and then also some other form of intervention in particular settings, for example, in the sport area. It was found that in the sport facilities, children could be subjected to corporal punishment, so this has to be addressed as well. And then also we found a sort of a path to ensure that children are protected against corporal punishment at state level. So we have this, you can see it, so we enact the law. Then we have a plan of action to ensure that, and this is what we had actually with Zambia. The Zambian example is quite telling. So you have the law, you have a national action plan, you have the support to the families, you have also to communicate, you have that national campaign to explain the law, the support to the families, and then monitoring and evaluation to make sure that this is well implemented and address any challenges. And there are challenges, obviously. Usually we talk about the barrier, the cultural, religious barrier. We often hear, I've been brought up that way, I've been hit, I am who I am today because I was well spanked. So all this has to be addressed as well, obviously. You have, the cultural acceptance is deep-rooted into our practice, the way we live, so it needs to be addressed. And then in some cases, violence against children is not a priority, it's not seen as a priority, and then corporal punishment less of a priority because it's normalized. These are challenges that need to be addressed. And then finally, we have, if you check our website, endcorporalpunishment.org, then you will find we have many publications, and then you find one, and I think I changed it too quickly, but okay. Too late, but then if you check our website, you will find a resource about the positive impact of prohibiting corporal punishment of children in all settings. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sonia. And many practical ideas there. And sometimes, transferring the theory into practice can be a challenge, but some great practical advice there. We are going to open the floor for questions for any of our presenters. So we do have, if I can ask Bess, maybe in Boromai, we've got 2 microphones here. Oh, one here, one for and one, if it's okay, if we could pass that around so that our people online can hear. Have we got, and apologise for people online, have we got one open so that if there are any questions online, we can... All right, sorry, you're just watching. But you have got some email addresses and lots of places that can be followed up as well. All right, so thanks. We've got our first question down there. And if you could state your name and ask your question. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tush Vikramanayaka from Sri Lanka, representing the CSOs. We are about to ban corporal punishment in Sri Lanka. We just passed a bill in cabinet in all settings, and we're looking forward to our government passing it in parliament. However, we all know that things take a long time. So I saw so many hands going up to say that they have banned corporal punishment in your countries. Is there one advice that you can give to my contingency in the front row there from my government to encourage them, empower them, and energize them to, rather than the rhetorics that many governments repeat, to actually do something about and enforce and implement the laws? Can I ask any of the state parties to give us some ideas, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Tai Makhili. I come from Lesotho. I'm the Deputy Principal Secretary from the Ministry of Gender, Youth and Social Development. That says we have a keen interest in what you are saying. Allow me to first have a question and also share some of our experiences with regard to this. My question is on the researches that have been done by the two professors, our good professors. Nice work. But please, can you share with us, is there any country where we have stopped corporal punishment and it has had an effect in socio-economic development? The global challenges that we have now, one of them is inequality, poverty, and are we saying with the approach to this is making a success story of our lives? We understand the research part of you, but practically, how efficient is it?
Thank you, that's great. So we've got that question. We've got a kind of question and a comment from Tash over here. What I am going to do, Angela, if I could invite you also to come up, because you've got the experience from Zambia, and it seems that our questions are not only on research now. So would you mind to come and join the group so we can also draw on that experience? And then we'll take a third question, and then we'll try and answer. There was a third question.
Thank you very much. My name is Khomole Morasisego. I am the Child Protection Specialist from the UNICEF Botswana Country Office. I think my question to the researchers, because I had, when they were talking about how they are looking at the impact of corporal punishment on children, but my question would be, what research have you done around issues of cultural practices, cultural norms, social norms, because this is what is embedded when it comes to corporal punishment. You know, without us, if we don't disintegrate these practices, it's going to be very difficult for us to make headway in the prevention of corporal punishment. I think I must say Botswana was there, it was in the red, because we still have corporal punishment in our constitution. We still have, corporal punishment being allowed in schools. It's only recently that we reviewed our Education Act that we've actually said no to corporal punishment. But in other settings, in the homes, it's still allowed.
Okay, thank you very much. So one on cultural experiences, the one on, I would say, any advice about, what are the gems? And I forget the third one, but I think, Elizabeth, you had listened to that. We'll come back to that one so that we can answer those, but you can be the next lot of questions. Okay, so who'd like to take any of those questions?
Okay, thank you very much for the great questions. Maybe I'll start by giving some thoughts on the last one, actually. So when thinking about cultural norms, I guess that the first thing to keep in mind is that we found negative effects even in places where physical punishment is socially normative, right? So that really shows that regardless of those cultural differences, physical punishment is something that really harms child development and health. Then, regarding research on how to shift these harmful attitudes and practices, I think that the INSPIRE framework, for example, from the WHO, it's a great example, and they provide a lot of evidence on this. And what we know is that we need to do ecological approaches to tackle this issue, right? It's not enough only to work with parents. It's not enough only to work with legislation. We really need to do a huge effort to change different things in different levels of the systems and ecologies where children develop. So things such as social media strategies, legislation change, but also working very closely with parents is fundamental in order to achieve these shifts in attitudes. And maybe if I may respond also to the second question a little bit, I would say that when thinking about the links between prohibiting physical punishment or preventing physical punishment and social development, one thing that is important also to consider is that there are huge inequities in children who receive physical punishment. Actually, we have found that children who are in the most disadvantaged homes tend to be at higher risk of physical punishment, also due to stress, for example, parental stress. So this definitely has some very significant implications on their learning and trajectories. Is one another burden for these children as they grow up, right? So I think that with this evidence, we can confidently conclude that prohibiting and eradicating physical punishment can help for these children's learning, health, and social and life trajectories in general. Thank you.
No, it was just about working with the communities and the traditional barrier. We often work also, we found out that in some countries, we work with community leaders, traditional leaders, religious leaders, because they have to be involved. And all the positive parenting intervention, family interventions usually happen in communities as well. So you can, when they are successful, all these effective intervention, when they are successful, obviously, it's being amplified and scaled up. They're used as examples so that community leaders and even people from the communities themselves, they can witness the success of this intervention, and then they can understand the need to ban violence against children and corporal punishment. So it's about working with the communities and involving the leaders as well and decision makers.
Thank you. I didn't know, Angela, if you wanted to comment on Tasha's question about, I think that was, what's the nugget or...
Well, yes, congratulations that you're about to enact the law. I think it would be very important for you to identify an individual who will actually be able to champion children's rights. This would work if you can have maybe a larger-than-life personality who's already in the public eye, and is very passionate about things to do with children. That would be the right person, and then you can form an alliance with them so that you keep children's issues at the very front of everything that you're doing. The question from Lesotho, just on the effects on the economy, I know that, I'm coming from a country where we've got a lot of physical challenges. So I know that it's very easy to think that children's rights will not have an effect on what's going on in the economy. But particularly when I speak for sub-Saharan Africa, we are generally very young countries. And these are the people that we have that are going to be there in the future. And one of the things that we find from the toxic stress that is available from so many things is that you get then people being the children growing up, and then you get addictions to alcohol, you get addictions to all sorts of substances. So I think it's an area where maybe we should have specific research. We have only been, as a country, we have only been, trying to collect data maybe for the last 2 years, but there's a lot that needs to come out, and data collection, monitoring, and evaluation is very important. Thank you.
We have another, at least 3 or 4 questions. There's one up the front here and many. All right, whoever's got that microphone, if you could, how about if we go here? You've got a couple. All right, thank you. How about if we take 4 questions and then see how we go?
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Let me thank the researchers for sharing such powerful findings. I am Neliswa Tekiso from South Africa, Director Child Protection in the National Department of Social Development. I wish to concur on these benefits, especially when it comes to implementation of laws, because in South Africa, we've got the Children's Act 38 of 2005, that makes it mandatory to report abuses, even beating by the parent, and also having a high court judgment that has made reasonable chastisement a crime. And it basically says no parent can hit a child. Should a parent hit a child, the child is reported into the Child Protection Register, and that parent or caregiver will not work with children in their lives. So that is the benefit of effective implementation of laws. That was my comment from South Africa, but I'm also standing in for Mozambique, Angelique, because she wanted me to speak in English for her, because in Mozambique, they are using the word physical violence. They are not using the word corporal punishment. She therefore requires a clarity in terms of distinction of physical violence and corporal punishment. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Milena Grillo. I come from Costa Rica, Panama Foundation. Costa Rica was the second country in the region to abolish physical punishment. It is not easy. It took us 5 years, 7 months, and 4 days to get the law passed. So it was 2 governments and going, and we're going. Okay, what helped us give the final step was reviewing the wording of the project of law. And because what we have identified is that really the resistance had to do with adults in general. Congress people, congressmen, congresswomen, when we talk to them, they really related to us as mothers and fathers, and we were going to take away a right that they have, to punish a child in order to educate. So there was a lot of resistance. So we sat and listened to them, and so we changed the name of the project of law. And in place of talking about prohibiting corporal punishment, we transferred the project to be a law, ¿verdad?, to protect the right of children to a discipline free of corporal punishment and abusability. The time we did that, parents felt that they have recovered their right to exercise a discipline, but the Costa Rican state was only establishing that such discipline could in no way be corporal punishment, thing like that. And so we got the law approved, and we are working, and it's not solved because the law is just, it's not the target, it's just the beginning, it's just the beginning to have a court, but it really helps. We then helped, accompany Paraguay and Brazil in their law reforms, and it also worked for them. So I wish you a lot of luck. Okay.
Very much. We've got a question down the back, and then we've got a comment up the front. All right, one down the back, then comment up the front, and then we'll also get some questions. We've got questions and answers going at the same time, but anyway, let's move with that because I think it's very interactive. So question and then up the front. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dorothy Evangelista from Valenzuela City, Philippines, the first pathfinding city in the globe. Yeah, I have we have a shelter, what we call House of Hope in Valenzuela, where we put children in conflict with the law in that shelter because it's mandated by law. We cannot put them behind bars, right? Well, I see them as a victim. These CICL are victims also, right? So they're victims of corporal punishment. My question is, do you have any research for healing and recovery for these children? We know one of the preventive is what you're saying about the parenting programs, but I also want to know a research on the healing and recovery for these children, because in the centers I see sometimes the the youth are agitated because of what happened to them. There's a trauma. So that's my question. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we've got a question on definition, if someone's got that in mind, and then we've got that question. Now we're coming up the front here. I'm not sure if it's a question or comment. And then one behind there, then we're going to get some answers. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. First of all, our brief comment that Sri Lanka, even though we have a good system and other intervention, we are trying to ending this child corporal punishment. Even though we are facing a lot of challenges, I think I asked, thank you for your insightful and comprehensive presentation. You have clearly put in remarkable effort. I have a question, all three of you. In your research, did you encounter any individuals who, having experienced physical punishment in their own childhood, choose not to physically discipline their own children due to the negative impact it had on them? If you could shed some light on that aspect, it would be greatly appreciated. We also, pragmatic level, we are facing a lot of challenges. That's why our CSO representative pointed out that. So we needed.
Thank you very much. That's a great question.
It would be helpful.
One last question here, and then we'll go to some answers. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jane, and my question has been asked, so I'll give a comment. As a survivor of physical violence, so I'll put in life to what the data, the science, the policies, I'll put some life, and I'm grateful. I'm from Kenya, and I'm grateful that my country has banned corporal punishment. However, I am a survivor. I don't know whether I have survived, whether I'm still a victim, but when I was 10 years old, a teacher hit me on my eye. I'm partially blind because of a teacher. I have been to the hospital. I have had 5 operations on one eye. Every time I have gone to the hospital is because of my eye. So even as we talk about corporal punishment, it's not just the numbers we saw, they are human beings. This is 49 years later. I still suffer from one mistake that was made by an adult on a child.
Thank you. Thanks so much for sharing that. One more question there.
Thank you very much. Very powerful sharing. And then I have one question. I am from Japan, and then representing the EVAC CSO platform, working for the ending violence against children. And then yesterday I participated the side event of Inspire, and then some of us may have joined that event. And then one outcome was very interesting is that they evaluated the 7 strategies outcome effectiveness, and then the least effective result strategy was the I implementing the enforcement of laws. So it's really, I'm wondering that the strong relationship has been shared by Sonia, that the European survey that the law enforcement have a positive relationship of the outcome of banning of the corporal punishment. So but the survey is a little bit old one, 2011, and then we usually use that survey to persuade the government. But I have a question that whether you are going to do any further latest survey on the implementation law and the outcome of the banning of corporal punishment.
Stopping the questions there so that we can get, and can we have quite brief answers, because we need to kind of wrap this session up and then move on, but there will be a chance for other sharing in the next session. So thanks, Elizabeth.
So we'll start with the definition issue. And so the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child has called corporal punishment a form of violence. And so that's, to me, the definitive answer, that any form of hitting a child, no matter how light, is a form of violence. Among adults, we consider any form of hitting a form of violence. So we are just asking that that same protection be given to children, the same protection that adults have in most countries. We're not asking for something special. We're asking for the same protection that adults already have. So any form of hitting would be a form of violence. And so using the term physical violence is appropriate. We use corporal punishment and physical punishment because that's what countries have been using over time, but we all should be saying hitting and violence. I will speak to the question about whether people have stopped hitting in generations. And we know that that's happening because rates of physical punishment are decreasing over time. So people who were hit, most people were hit for generations, fewer are hitting now. We see that in my country, the United States, we see that in countries around the world. As more people learn that there are other ways to discipline, the more they learn that there's harm to their children because they don't want to harm their children. They think they're doing the right thing. And that is what we have to connect with parents about, is we want the best for their children, and hitting is not the way to do it. And many parents, once they stop, they realize how freeing that is, how much they don't like hurting their children, how when they see their children cry, that makes them sad. And so they realize they want to stop because they don't want to continue. And then they remember how harmful it was for them, how it hurt, and how they were afraid as children. And they can stop. They don't have to continue it through generations. And so I've done interviews with parents. I know Jorge has done with his intervention. When we talk with parents, they are very glad not to be able to stop, to have the permission to stop. Many of them feel like they don't have the permission because the culture is telling them to do it. But if we can change that culture to say we should protect children and give them the same protection against violence, then parents have the permission to stop doing that. And they want to. They don't like hurting their children.
And maybe just let me add a little bit to that, because in Colombia, we actually have found the same in the middle of a lot of research, interviewing parents, and parents actually express that, the desire of not hitting their children, but actually learning other strategies to manage challenging behaviors, right? Which are common. All children have these challenges. And what parents really require in a lot of these cases is more tools and more skills to know how to deal with those, right? But we really found in Colombia that a lot of parents who actually use physical punishment feel bad about that. And in a lot of cases, the use is explained by stress, for example, or mental health challenges, which again speaks to the need to support the mental health and well-being of caregivers as well. And maybe I will also respond very quickly to this question on Inspire, because actually one of the presenters yesterday is one of my co-authors in another review for the Inspire strategies. And we found actually something similar, and is that the evidence for legislation is where we have the least amount of studies. But despite the little amount of studies, all those studies are very clear in showing potential benefits of legislation, right? So the evidence indicates that, but even regardless of the evidence, I think that only considering a rights perspective is totally clear that legislation is totally needed, such as the legislation that we have to protect adults, women, indigenous people, right? Children. So we should definitely move in that direction. Thank you.
And quickly about the definition, like Liz was saying, that the Committee on the Right of the Child recommends that states prohibit corporal punishment. So we often see in some laws physical punishment, not even physical punishment, physical violence, torture, abuse prohibited. This is not corporal punishment, however light. Because then when a child is being abused, and then we want to talk about corporal punishment, you have sometimes the court will say, this is not corporal punishment, this is just a typical violence and so on. So we have to ensure that corporal punishment is prohibited, however light. So we don't think about the degree, abuse and so on, or torture. Yes, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I know there are some other questions, and I have been asked for people online. We have got your questions now. We've recorded those questions. My understanding is that some of them are similar, and we have 13 different governments in the room with us, so please understand I will then prioritise a little bit of time for them to talk now so that we can keep to time. And we do have civil society, some speakers near the end, and I'd like to make sure that I reserve that time. But that would mean now that we have 10 minutes. It's not long for all of those countries, but I would like to invite, and thank you for those who have actually shared already a little bit about what they're doing. And it's not a big speech, but if anyone is there and would like to tell us about what they're thinking or some of the actions that are occurring in their countries, could just raise your hand now and we'll give you the microphone and you could just talk a little bit about where you're up to. It's a bit like speed dating, isn't it? So everyone's getting to know everybody else and they can follow them up in the next few days. So thank you.
Good morning. My name is Fisongo Bese from South Africa, from the Department of Basic Education, School Safety. In our country, we are about to do massive training for teachers on positive discipline. So we're still developing materials, but we would like to, if there is any country that has got good materials that we can actually look into. We have been given money. We are just developing materials. Thank you very much.
Great. I'm sure there'll be some countries and people who will follow you up. Next, thank you.
Good morning. My name is Laura from Sierra Leone, Laura Kuma from the Ministry of Gender. We have not banned corporal punishments, but we have an Education Act from the Ministry of Basic and Senior Secondary Education, which say in Act 72 that corporal punishment and all other forms of degrading punishments designed to cause or create fear or physical pain in people administered or threatening the purpose of domination, control, are prohibited. So we've banned corporal punishment in schools. So we're just trying to ban it in other settings, like in caregiver homes and home in general, because really, the children suffer corporal punishment mostly at home too. Like he was saying, parents are stressed, mental health and other things. So we're trying to do safeguarding, which will ban corporal punishment in all settings. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Over here.
All right, I'm Liz Zilombe from Malawi. Just as others have shared, as Malawi, we also have an Education Act, which in principle discourages or rather ban corporal punishment. But as the other colleagues have shared, we still have challenges where this corporal punishment is still happening so much in the homes and the other settings. And I just wanted also to speak around the issue of ensuring the positive parenting and the public awareness and all this stuff, because the other challenge that it keeps happening is where, to some extent, people are failing to balance up the issues of child rights versus corporal punishment, and then the responsibility of parents, communities as a whole. So we still have those challenges, some fight sometimes, where some parents will say you are banning this in the school, but this is something that we still need to do in the home. And so that paradigm, I think it's something that still needs to be tackled. Thank you.
I am Mahesan, Secretary, Ministry of Women, Child and Youth Affairs and Sports in Sri Lanka. Our Government of Sri Lanka, it has taken some proactive measures regarding the provision of corporal punishment with a strong commitment to safeguarding children's rights. Number one, legal amendment and policy initiatives. Sri Lanka has taken significant steps to strengthen our legal framework against child cruelty. Our penal code amendment, I think section 308, to explicitly ban corporal punishment across all settings, such as the schools, their own homes, children homes, and other child care institutions. Further, Ministry of Education, I think we have pledged two important things that our respect to corporal punishment circular, we have to revisit and will be published soon, as well as the guidelines of the corporal punishment also we will do it. And the other one, training of capacity building to all the child care workers in different level, national level as well as the subnational level. That also fruitfully we have to implement with the positive discipline and techniques that I think it would be the way to strengthen that our system. And the other one, that procedural guidelines program, we have implemented good practice, positive discipline and other positive discipline program in district and division level. It's helped our parents understanding, adopt position, parenting techniques which ensuring child care are raised in caring and non-violent homes. And also monitoring childcare, that also we are doing all the childcare institution. These are our some initiatives. Thank you.
Going on there in Sri Lanka. Down the back, is it Lesotho? Is it down? Oh, sorry, here and then to Lesotho. Thank you.
Good day all. I'm Otto Trulam from Papua New Guinea. It's in the Pacific. In Papua New Guinea, we have two main legislations. That's the Lekautim Pikinini Act, Lekautim meaning care, and also the Juvenile Justice Act. Juvenile Justice specifically focuses on children who come in conflict with the law. Now the Lekautim Pikinini Act, in the earliest part of the Act, sections 3 and 4 have actually captured the rights of children in the objectives of the Act and the principles of the Act. So the Lekautim Pikinini Act is rights-based. The Act has also outlawed corporal punishment. We also have an Education Act. It outlawed corporal punishment. We also have a policy, child management behavior policy. It talks about how teachers actually should treat children. Now in the Juvenile Justice Act, we were reminded last year in Samoa that the legislation gives criminal responsibility up to 10 years. Now we've been told that we should increase the age to 14. So the Act is now under review. We are going to review the Act and increase the age of criminal responsibility from 10 to 14 to be in compliance with CRC. Our main challenge is because of the geographical setting. Implementation has been one of our challenges in the country. We have very good programs together with UNICEF PNG. We are rolling out the positive parenting. And I think 4 provinces in the country, good results are being achieved. Parents are actually being taught how to look after their children, care for their children. We also have another very important program, provincial engagement program. That's the program we are trying to roll out the Lekautim Pikinini Act through all the provinces. We're trying to set up a system in all the provinces, a governance system that would work together with child protection officers. We have child protection officers throughout the country, all provinces in the country. So just the challenge is to actually implementation. We have challenges in the geographical settings, but otherwise the country is doing well. The government has actually assisted us to actually legislate the Lekautim Pikinini Act in 2015. Prior to that, we were using the laws we adopted from our colonizers, Australia, the Child Welfare Act. But now we have the Lekautim Pikinini Act. It addresses almost everything, especially in terms of child's rights.
Thank you very much. And earlier this morning, I did talk briefly about PNG because Child Fund also works with you there and showed some good examples of work that was going on in schools. This is going to have to be our last presentation, but we hope that this is just the beginning because the conference is tomorrow and this will go on, and the meeting today at 3 o'clock is inviting all governments. So please.
Thank you very much. My name is Moho Muteo, Director Child Protection Services in Lesotho. This was a wonderful and fruitful discussions. As we come to Lesotho, we have outlawed corporal punishment in schools. but the principal law still has an element of chastisement, which you cannot really say this is, the issue is on the cultural perspective, how people feel like there will be a vacuum in terms of disciplining children. So I think we have to be very robust in terms of providing alternative or positive parenting, because what is happening now is people feel like without corporal punishment, there will be a vacuum. Therefore, they won't feel like there will be a way of disciplining children in the positive manner. I think that's where the premise, and that's why we came up with the prevention and response plan on violence against children following the survey that we did. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, and thanks for all of that wonderful input. And please forgive me for not being able to cover everyone. Oh, now I said that. All right, I am going to go to Cambodia because we specially invited them, and Child Fund's working in Cambodia, so I'm breaking my own rules. But if we can have hear very briefly. Sri Lanka. Oh, sorry. Oh, haven't we heard from Sri Lanka? We have heard from Sri Lanka. We do need to move on. I'm really very sorry. All right. We've got two more presentations. And the critical role of civil society and in ending corporal punishment has had some attention today, but I think we need to hear a little bit more about that. So Boromai Hun is the country director for Child Fund Cambodia, and over the past 15 years, oh, sorry, thank you. Thank you very much. So over the past 15 years, she's worked alongside diverse communities, partnering with local civil society organisations, including young people. Working with various organisations, she's contributed to programs that have had a community-driven approach. She believes that civil society plays a key role in preventing and responding to violence against children. Welcome, Boromai.
Thank you, Margaret, for the warm welcome. Good morning, everyone. I am very delighted to be here with you all this morning to ensure that civil society organization contribution to ending corporal punishment is rightfully promoted. Child Fund commenced work in Cambodia in 2007. Our work is primarily through and with civil society partners, with a special focus on child education and child protection. Cambodia seeks to end corporal punishment through a mix of existing laws and ongoing legal reforms. The country expressed its commitment to prohibiting all corporal punishments of children when it became a Pathfinder country in September 2019. Currently, corporal punishment is banned in schools. And while prohibition is still to be achieved at homes, alternative care settings and daycare, Cambodia is on the brink of passing its first comprehensive child protection law. This legislation is expected to provide a clear legal framework against all forms of violence towards children. Earlier this year, Child Fund Alliance and our partners in Cambodia undertook a contextual analysis of perceptions to corporal punishments within Cambodian schools. The findings, while showing significant progress has been made, especially with the introduction of child-friendly school policy, also showed violence disciplines remains prevalent. Findings are clear that enacting prohibitions on its own is not enough to eliminate violence punishments. And I think we heard a lot from the previous speakers as well. But rather, banning corporal punishment needs to be combined with other practical measures to change attitude and social norms, and importantly, raise the status of children within society. Civil society organizations around the world have and continue to play a vital role in transforming these violence-related social norms to drive long-term social change and support their governments to implement legislation and policy that address these deep-rooted violent community practices. In Cambodia, Child Fund works with very committed and passionate civil society groups who have influenced social norms among parents. And I actually would like to share a quote. This is one of my favorites, quote that shows the importance of working at the grassroots levels to change attitudes and behaviors towards violence against children. Changing parenting and communities' attitudes to violence is transformative change. And while it feels like it comes quickly, it is a result of an ongoing awareness raising, training on child rights and positive parenting, among others. Across the world, many civil society organizations are offering support services such as counseling and rehabilitation for children who have experienced violence, helping them recover and thrive. Civil society monitor the implementation of laws and policies against corporal punishment and report violations to ensure accountability and compliance. Importantly, as previously stated, they transform social norms and cultural norms. Fellow advocates and friends, based on our experience, we call on the governments to engage with civil society actors to promote community awareness and behavior change that is necessary to implement these laws and policies to end corporal punishment. We also call on the governments to work collaboratively with all parts of civil society organizations to strengthen child protection system, including prevention, early intervention, and treatment. Finally, we call on governments to recognize the valuable role that civil society actors play to involve children in the design and implementation of effective laws and policies that ends corporal punishment and give children a voice. Thank you.
Baramai. And I just acknowledge our Cambodian government colleagues who've just come in. I know they've been at a meeting, but our final speaker, and there may be time, people may be able to stay. I realise the time limitations, but Maria Mercedes is the country director for Save the Children in Colombia. She's worked in the design of public policies and implementation of large-scale programs, and she's hugely experienced in this area. And I think it's fitting that our final speaker actually is from Colombia, and we welcome you and thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much. We're happy at Save the Children to be part of this event, co-hosting the event with our allies. And welcome to Colombia as well. And I do hope you have the time to enjoy what Bogota City offers. Un saludo especial a los colegas colombianos de gobierno y representantes de la sociedad civil. So having us to speak about the context of the participation of civil society, I want to give a little bit of context about Colombia. Colombia was the first country in South America back in 2018 who conducted the Violence Against Children survey, which was fundamental in order to promote the enactment of the law. And the results back then were very alarming. We still face many challenges, but back then, for example, one key result was that 77% of the children stated that their parents used corporal punishment at home. Civil society has played a very important role. I have to say that civil society in Colombia has a very active and strong participation. I want to highlight two main coalitions. One is called Alianza por la Niñez, which translates Alliance for Colombian Children, and Yes Ya. Alianza por la Niñez is a coalition of civil society organizations. It's conformed by almost 200 organizations that advocate for children's rights in Colombia. It was created about 22 years ago, and Save the Children Colombia was part of this alliance from the beginning. And altogether, throughout our programs, we have been able to reach more than 2 million children in the country, and also 1.1 families in the country. Niñez Ya, which is the other one, is called Children Now. It's also another coalition, most recent one. It started in 2018, also with Save the Children participation along with other 100 organizations. And this alliance strictly focuses on policy makers, in influencing policymakers, and in strengthening public policies for child protection. So as I told you, Colombia enacted the law that prohibits corporal punishment back in 2021, and we became the 63rd country in the world to pass this law, which was a fundamental legislative step in protecting children and upholding their right. I want to highlight 4 key areas in which the civil society specifically influenced. Civil society has been instrumental in both the creation and ongoing promotion and monitoring of the law. 4 key areas. First one, of course, in advocacy and awareness raising. We have worked tirelessly to really advocate and highlight the harmful effects of corporal punishment based on research. Civil society has also played a vital role in influencing policymakers. Back in 2018, 2020, or 2021, we collaborated closely with the government of Colombia to draft and advocate for the law. We were part of consultancy groups that participated in the Congress, and we made sure that what was being drafted aligned to international framework and standards. There was, for example, a very example of what we did as a civil society. For example, for the past presidential candidates, we were able to commit them to sign a pledge in order for them to include corporal punishment as one of the key topics. Also, we played a key vital role in the creation and development of the national pedagogical strategy that stems from the law, which is also still a challenge in Colombia, the implementation of that pedagogical strategy, nationally speaking. And lastly, we have also provided post-enactment support and monitoring for the implementation of this law, specifically helping local governments to establish mechanisms to ensure compliance with all the challenges that entails. But as has been the road that civil society in Colombia has played in the implementation of this important law. To finish, I was also asked to comment about our Save the Children's global commitments on this issue. We have said it here across this event: corporal punishment is a violation of children's rights, and of course, it demands for us to address this issue urgently. Save the Children is committed and remains committed to help achieve a universal prohibition of corporal punishment by 2030. As we all know, this is very essential for eradicating all forms of violence against children. For the past 25 years, Save the Children has been at the forefront of advocacy. We have worked tirelessly to shift societal attitudes and influence legislation worldwide. We have been keen in producing research, evidence, reports, policy sessions, discussions, participating at the UN Convention of the Rights of the Children, influencing this issue across the world. We'll continue working with key partners like UNICEF, World Vision, and among others, to build on our experience working in the ground, in the field, in the countries, working to strengthen child protection systems in which we believe they must be holistic and they must be inclusive. We'll continue implementing across the globe positive parenting programs based on a family-based program that collects the best practices on parenting interventions in the world. And finally, and with this I want to finish, and I want to also advocate for a very important issue that I wish it could have been more mentioned in this event, is that we will continue from Save the Children in promoting an active and real involvement of children in these discussions, because children's visions and perspectives are important, because their contributions are invaluable, because it's their right to participate in all these discussions and all the decisions that affect their lives, and these decisions must be informed also by children. So I invite you, and I invite you all the countries to engage actively children in these discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Maria, and I take your point about our need to continue to involve children, particularly the issue we're talking about is affecting them. I know we're to time, and so I do apologise for the governments who haven't been able to speak, but reminding you that there is a special meeting at 3 p.m. today that WHO now has invited only governments to. Yep. And if you would like to go, and we would really encourage governments to go, please come and speak to Bess, and she can tell you more about that meeting at 3 p.m. today. So we've heard that corporal punishment remains a critical issue for children and their societies around the world. We know that collaborations, partnerships, integrated health and psychological approaches, legislation, and good implementation of that legislation and social norms change are all tools for ending corporal punishment. So we know what to do, and the question might be, what are we waiting for? Yesterday, Dr. Etienne Krug said, hopefully into the future, that we will say before the conference and after the conference. And I do hope that after the conference there will be more opportunities for research, for action, for prohibition in schools and the like. So in finishing, I'd like to thank my co-sponsors and really encourage you to use your voice in this platform. Don't waste the opportunity, because there's still an urgent need for action, and us being here is really the reason, and the reason for us being here today is to put corporal punishment on that agenda. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sharing. As I said, it's just the beginning, and to have 13 countries in the room today has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you for all of the people who are online and staying, and thank you very much.